Welcome to But Her Lyrics, the show where we delve into the political lyrics of songs I like, songs I wrote, or topics that I think should be a song. I'm Shauna Potter, singer and lyricist for War on Women, and your host. This is a unique one. I am excited to bring you my buddy and interviewer of the stars, Christina Rowatt of Occupy the Void, a podcast about the intersections of music and mental health. We dig into her background, of course, but I just want you to know she has interviewed artists from Guns N' Roses, Tool, Incubus, The Melvins, Mastodon, Chelsea Wolfe, High on Fire, Judas Priest, Converge, Hailstorm, War on Women, just to name a few. Super impressive. And I was recently a guest on her episode with Danita Sparks of L7. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Of course, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff in the show notes, so check it out. Now, Christina and I do know each other. We met when War on Women toured Australia with Converge in 2019, and she documented our two big festival dates using some of the footage for a short documentary that she put out, partly about us, partly about feminism and sexism in music. It's called Her War is Our War, and I highly recommend watching that. Link in the notes. So very cool to reconnect with her here. But even though Christina isn't a known musician, spoiler alert, yet, her connection to words, her experience interviewing big artists about deep topics, combined with this being the first time she's ever been interviewed, well, it makes for a very refreshing take on lyrics, for me at least, and the creative process that I hope you all listening can enjoy and benefit from too. I'm crossing my fingers. I liked it. I hope you like it too. Anyway, but up first, Patreon! Biggest of shout outs to my Patreon recruits, Pupcakes and Pastries, Ronnie Navarro, Nick M, Melissa P, and Meatheads, Ben, Isaias, hi, Russell W, Byron, Bob VV, Pete, and Stephen K. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you. And thanks to my newest member, Jim B, and to anyone that has upgraded their tier recently. Appreciate that. You can get a shout out too if you sign up. Or, new thing, you can gift a Shauna-specific Patreon membership to a friend if you think they'd be interested in what I do. So, you know, happy V-Day, right? So maybe now is a good time to up your monthly membership amount, which you can do at a discount if you buy annually instead of month to month. You have lots of options. And please, please, please know, patrons get to decide. What about my life do you want to see or hear about? Message me your requests. And don't forget about any special benefits your specific membership tier gets. I might owe you a virtual call. Hello. Also, I'm going on tour with Helmet in late February and March. War on Women is finally heading back to the West Coast, Texas, a lot of cities we haven't hit in a while. So keep that in mind. My patrons get on the list, okay? So again, sign up, then message me on Patreon, tell me what city you want to go to, and I'll see you there. Okay, so ahead of my chat with Christina Rowatt, I just want to say sorry. There's a little bit of us talking over each other. It's not that bad. It does sound like a real life conversation, not a stuffy interview. So just a heads up. And now my interview with Christina Rowatt of Occupy the Void. Interview time! Christina Rowatt, thank you so much for joining me on But Her Lyrics. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you so much. I am Christina Rowatt, as mentioned. I do a mental health podcast called Occupy the Void, which is about music and mental health and creativity. I've done a bunch of other stuff. Is this a bio? Well, because I'm not a lyricist, I should probably tell you. Well, I'm not.
You can tell us a few things. That's fine.
Yeah. So I've been like a content producer and a journalist for 15 years. So I worked in music, television, radio. I worked for a music festival, and I worked for Revolver magazine for a year and a half, making a podcast about each artist spoke about their history as a fan. So that was a really fun thing. And we also did a brief series called Songs for Black Days, which is based on the Soundgarden song, which is where artists pick 6 songs that they turn to for solace. And to be honest, I made a playlist of them and they really work.
That's
And
cool.
there was some really random ones, like Will from Lorna Shore turned me on to The Midnight, which is an odd choice. I don't know, they're like a synthwave band, but it kind of cheers you up. It's good. Anyway, carry on.
How
Yes,
so your current podcast, The Void, is that
Occupy the Void. Yeah.
Occupy the Void? Is that sponsored by anyone in particular? You're just doing that
It's
on your
sponsored.
own?
It's sponsored by me leaving the music industry and getting a day job that can actually make me afford things.
And not to make
It
assumptions,
could not be, yeah, it could not be any more truthful than that.
but
Yes.
that day job is not the podcast.
It is not the podcast.
Yeah,
No.
that's what I thought. I was like, I know when I'm not making,
Yeah, yeah. I'm a content specialist by day. I work in a very dry industry trying to make words more meaningful and to think about the person at the other end and explaining things. So it's very dry content, but I really enjoy finding ways to make it human and think about getting some of the people who can be yeah, who are very, very specific subject experts, us kind of taking it in the digital team and going, well, how do we make it make sense? How do we give it something? So I've worked in the music industry for 20 years, so it's quite interesting just doing something different, which is still creative, which is still writing.
to before I get into your history a little bit more about how you started, that approach, even though you're saying that that's like it's a very like dry, whatever, it's like copy. I think that there's like two kinds of lyricists. And one is just like, oh, here's this thing that came out of my soul, sort of, like you're just like, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, some of my songs are like that, right? They just fucking come out and I'm like, well, this is perfect. Like, lucky me. And then there's the others that I'm thinking more about and I'm thinking, who's the audience? What's the perspective? How do I want
Mm,
them to interpret this? And so I think the way you just spoke about it is a really interesting way to think about lyrics.
100%. Yeah. It's how are you tempering them? Are you thinking about the feedback loop? Because it's always circular, right? And you never know whether people are going to how they're going to take it and send it back, and they're not kind of sending it back directly. But I think it's good to, I don't know, I just think words are fascinating. Like I've been obsessed with words forever. And I was talking to someone who yesterday and he explained something to me and I was like, I really appreciate you explaining that to me because for me the way I process the world is through words. So when you don't communicate, I'm going in, circles sort of thing. Whereas when someone actually communicates to me, I'm like, oh, words make sense to me. I understand. And it's the same with music. I mean, the words are, for me, like the emotional vehicle. I can appreciate a filthy guitar riff and stuff, but for me, like, or an awesome drummer or, a sick bass line or whatever. But it's for me, the songs I have on repeat are because of the words.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, yeah.
So, how did you get started in the music industry? And was it always like interviewing people? Like, how
Well,
did you get here?
Well, my first ever full-time job after I was fired as a legal secretary that I did for 3 months, and he literally, and I'm not kidding, said to me when I hired, you'd probably be better as a journalist. So I'd like to say to my old boss, whose name
Thank
I
you.
cannot recall right now, I am, ha ha ha. But I walked into this job. It was a receptionist job at a really famous recording studio in Sydney called Studios 301. And I walked in there and I did not really feel like I fit in the law office. The girls I worked with just talked about losing weight, getting married, and famous people. So I didn't really feel like I had my people. But I walked in and she had candles burning and kind of she was this amazing woman running the running the studio, and she taught me, and we just connected instantly. And she taught me so much about operating in the business. And my job was in some ways very chill, and in some ways, annoying. I would make coffee and I would walk around the studio with a cordless phone. So I would go and sit in the highly illegal smoking room with the bands all day and talk to them. So that's how I learned how to.
Yeah.
And I also brought everyone lunch and in a thing that probably, well, I mean, they wouldn't even pay someone to do this anymore. This would be an intern job. They
Yeah.
paid me enough to live, which was obviously happened another time, barely, but I used to have to go and get everyone's lunches, and we would give them 12 menus from every restaurant nearby, and I would have to go to sometimes 12 places because everyone in the studio needs their little thing. It was a mastering studio,
Oh
so
no.
it's less emotional and it's more like, make me
Yes.
louder in the mix. I want to be louder in the mix. So it's a different kind of psychology, but that was the beginning. And then I left that job to afford 3 meals a day and went into another industry. And then I came back when I was 24. I got another receptionist job at a music television station called Channel V. And I started out there, and then I started out writing reviews, and then I started out writing a couple of days a week. And then I became the web editor of the website. And then I started doing phoner interviews with bands. And then Sebastian Bach came to town, who was a guy from Skid Row, and we decided that we should probably do that on camera because that would be hilarious and he would be very compelling.
He
And
is.
it was hilarious. He sung Cole Porter to me in the first 10 minutes, my first ever on camera interview. It was pretty weird. I did ask him to sing AC/DC Back in Black, and he said, not if you don't have $5,000. And a part of me died, Shauna, in that moment that I'm like, oh my God, I just did that. And this is my first interview, and now he's going to be mad. And then he's like, but I can sing Cole Porter. So we did that, and then the publicists really liked it, and kids liked it. So I kept filming all these interviews with bands that were just going to go on our website, not even on YouTube, just on our native video player.
Wow.
And then I ended up, I don't know how I hustled this, but they're like, you don't really have the right look to be on television. And
Fuck
I was
you.
a very, yeah, dude, yeah, then we'll talk about, yeah. Well, the girls on television, I don't know if you know the show Extra,
Like, oh,
on
extra, extra.
yeah. So
Yeah, it's
so
like
that
Hollywood.
girl worked. That girl was on television when I was there.
Gotcha. Okay.
So very a perfect Australian beach babe kind of look.
Yeah.
I was pretty awkward in my 20s. So it's not it. I don't. That's not my aesthetic, and that was the
No.
aesthetic they were after. But I ended up producing a show which was like a music video show where we got for an hour. Every artist I got to do these interviews would go through our music video library, which was printed out on paper, digi beta tapes, and
Yes.
all these videos never get played. We just happen to have them in the library.
Badass.
So I would bring them this printout and go pick your favorite 6 or 7 metal videos. And this show, who no one checked. I don't know how I pulled this off, but it went straight to the girl who actually programmed the tapes. No one signed it off because it was on at 1 a.m. and no one cared.
Yes.
So we would get these emails from people going, and the ratings, it rated. People actually tuned in.
That sounds amazing. What year? Like, what time frame is this?
Yeah, no, this is a long time ago, 2009. So
Okay.
15 years ago.
Because that's
So,
the kind of thing that I was watching when it was like the late 90s.
yeah,
You
this
know?
isn't, yeah, so I was kind of referencing what music television, when it was cool, I was
Yeah.
trying to bring that back in my own world and kind of do interviews because I hung out in the forums all day, which was like proto social media guys, if you're not old. And it's where all they wanted to talk about was heavy metal. And so I was like, well, why don't we do anything on the air that supports the most passionate community we have? They'd never got more negative feedback than when they canceled the primetime metal show. Never in their whole history. So I was like, it wasn't just about me. It was about the kids I grew up with, my friends who I grew up with. It was about the scene I knew that existed in Australia that was so potent and so passionate and so loving towards this music and getting we have a very and I don't know, I'm not working directly in the mainstream industry right now. We have a very risk averse and very conservative music industry, like aggressively so. And when it comes to heavy music, it doesn't exist. So after all this, we were going to go and do a music festival thing, and do like a thing with the station and music festival, and they're like, nah, and they basically pulled the plug at the last minute and said no one likes heavy metal. Everyone likes Rihanna. I'm like, I like Rihanna. I don't. They don't
Why
have
not
to be
both?
mutually exclusive. Yeah, we don't. So it was kind of, and then the music festival contacted me and said, do you want to come work for us instead? So I went and worked for them for East Coast Tours on a backstage channel. So
Wow.
I definitely came of age at a time when music festivals were really big, when music television still existed. You couldn't really replicate my experiences in the modern world when you could get a paid job in a recording studio answering the phone.
Right.
So like my entire early career, you could not replicate. So although I spent a great deal of my time in abject poverty, I did get to see a world that it no longer exists. So that was really interesting, and it's kind of formed a lot of, wanting to and it's made me comfortable to do my own thing and build my own shows. Because this is, yeah. Anyway,
Absolutely.
sorry, that was a really long answer.
Quick time out. I'm going to get my dog.
Yeah.
Rosie,
Do your thing.
the only way she'll not bark at everyone outside is if she's stuck in my office. Okay.
Sorry, am I going on too long? I'm not used to being interviewed. Is it fine? I could come.
That's staying in the interview.
You can edit it. Yeah.
That. It's up to you. The longer you talk, the longer you talk, the less time I have to clean my house, and that is both positive and negative.
I like so, well, just I'll get into the actual content rather than talking about. I'm just like sitting here. This is like therapy. I'm reflecting on the background, but it's true.
But it's true. If you are someone that always interviews other people, you're never talking about it and probably never thinking about it in this way. And I find this. I find that interesting, and that's why I wanted to interview
Thanks.
you.
It's exciting. I feel very special to be on with all these cool people that you do.
Well, let's switch gears. Actually, I feel like you interview a lot of people that are at the level that I wish I was interviewing those same people, and I'm not. But
hey, building your own thing is hard.
It's hard. And obviously this is like one of 20 things I do, and it's like not my passion. I love talking to people, but obviously I'm going full force into the band and intimacy coordination over this. But I like this, and so speaking of interviewing people, you get to interview a lot of folks.
Yep.
All kinds of
them, and sometimes they say yes.
Yeah, right.
Working for Revolver, they said yes. It's not hard to book guests for a Revolver.
Right, I think of course.
That's been the most fun because we can go, let's do this. And
anyone, you can almost get anyone that you want. Yeah.
And I feel so blessed to work with them. Like they're an absolute joy to work with. I hope to work with them again because Revolver, go Revolver.
Revolver, I am also available if you need someone.
Yeah.
but okay, so but my podcast is But Her Lyrics. So it's for hers, it's for they, thems. Do you find in your interviews that there are some common themes that are always coming out in the answers of like women and non-binary and gender non-conforming folks? Like is there like a thread that ties them together, or is it like everyone's different and no?
I have to preface this with, I have interviewed my numbers on men versus women are not good. They're because I hope I'm qualified to be here. I can talk about the people I have interviewed, and I definitely made more effort to work on it with Revolver when we had more agency and stuff. But when I worked for the music festival, there were generally 1 to 2 bands of women on the entire bill. So I would try and talk to them. Right. But there's a huge gender problem on music festivals, as everyone who is listening.
Yeah, I'd say that's not your fault,
That's not. Yeah, I can't speak to that, but I don't know whether I actually don't think it's something that can be gendered. I think each artist is their own unique thing. So I don't think there was like a women theme or anything that came through. I feel like they're. Do
you think there's a difference between interviewing men and women, like either from how you approach it or from how you're received by them?
I think about it. I think about it more because it is something that I'm self-conscious about. That I feel like I can't do more if my job is working for the music festival and there's not many women to talk to. I can't like engineer them out of thin air, and as well, like all the interviews I did before then and for The Void with Christina, my other YouTube channel, it was dependent on who's coming to town. So it's limiting, and even that is heavily gendered. But I think like some people worth mentioning is Shirley Manson from Garbage, who I've loved Garbage since I was a kid. That was a total bucket list moment. And she said something really interesting. She said, when I grew up, it was all about all the women I looked up to were one of the boys, and they wanted to agitate, and they wanted to say something, and they wanted to rock out, and they wanted to be difficult. Whereas like now, a lot of women are pretty entertainers, and they want to wear the right things and see the right things. And this is her saying it. I'm not saying that, but I do think that there is, I like the underground and, the rock world in general. That's, obviously there are a lot of women who want to agitate, but in terms of the most visibility, there is a problem where it seems, they're rewarded for it. This is the universe we live in. If you're a pretty
who's given money?
do you think has $1 billion? Pretty entertainers. And she said also what happened after 9/11. And I thought these were really interesting theories that she brought up
Huh.
was everyone got a lot more conservative because everyone
Yes.
got afraid. So something
Yes.
happened because she obviously was a big artist. Garbage was huge in the 90s. So she got to kind of see the changing of the guard.
Hmm.
And even she's like, even in the music industry, things got a lot more conservative and people were a bit more fearful. And there's this problem but she was talking about like her and Haley Williams was the other one on that bill and talking about how, we want to agitate and we want to rock out and all that kind of stuff. So it was interesting. And I'm very glad for women like that who got me through a lot of hard times. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like you experience sexism from some of the men you interview?
Um,
Like, have you
do you
have
know
you
I've
ever
never
really had to experience that?
not this is gonna sound weird. I don't think I've been conscious of it if it's been happening. That's weird, right? Like if I
I'd
feel
say
like
it's lucky. It's not, you don't have to think of it
yeah.
as weird or be
I'm
guilty
sure I
about it,
have.
but you're
I
lucky.
felt more sexist from the industry than
Yeah.
the artists themselves. I think a lot of artists are not misogynist. And I think a lot of us people, especially in the worlds I've spoken to, which is kind of fairly niche heavy music, that a lot of these dudes are actually coming around. And it's like when we did the film, when I went on tour with Shauna and we made a film called Her War is Our War. And we're talking to Nate from Converge, and he was talking about how he used to be he used to do things he's not proud of in terms of talking about women and all that kind of stuff, but he's kind of coming around. And I feel like it's weird. I guess because there's also not many, especially in Australia, there's not been many women journalists doing what I've been doing as well. So I guess they kind of see it as I get the impression it's kind of novel and I guess it's a weird narrative and it's fun. I run crews I love my boy, like my crew. I should get more women. Find me some female cinematographers because I don't know where to find them.
Internet.
Yeah. The internet, yeah,
Help
100%. Like
Christina,
I would love to have an all female crew. I've
right?
never done that. Yeah. I can't actually find my dudes right now. But there is I don't it's weird that it doesn't like instantly come to mind. Where I felt like things have been
I
sexist.
think
I
that's
think
okay. I mean, clearly you're a woman, you've experienced sexism. Like
oh
that has
yeah,
happened in your life. But I
in the
love,
industry at large,
but
100% in radio and TV and all that shit.
yes,
Yeah.
but that's good. That's good that the people you're interviewing who want to look good in the interview don't treat you like shit. I'm happy about that. Don't worry.
I don't I don't think I've traded on sexuality as well. I don't think I've ever wanted to make it about dressing, super provocatively or make it about my sexuality. I feel like I've worked really hard to make it not about that. And not that there's anything wrong, man, in this economy, trade on, I have all respect for
It's tough
trading on
out
your
there.
sexuality. I have all respect for trading on your sexuality, man. It's a potent force, and I respect that. But I guess I kind of wanted to do something different, and I was, yeah. I had awkward 20s, I wasn't like I didn't look like how I was meant to look and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't think that was kind of an avenue, and so I guess that's affected. I've not really had much negative feedback on YouTube, which is really weird. I don't get much negative. That's probably because I'm not huge. That's probably more than anything that the people who find me, and they happy I brought them an artist or whatever. But
No,
I don't
I
get.
kind of identify with that. Like
Yeah.
people will ask me in interviews, like, "Oh, do you get a lot of hate or trolls or rape or death threats?" And I'm like, "Well, not zero, but not like all the time, like you would kind of assume. Like it
Yeah.
really isn't that much." And luckily, they're still disturbed by the fact that it's not zero, which makes sense. But it's like, no, I think people like have
People are
just
decent.
left us
A lot
alone, and I also think maybe it's because we're not huge. Like no one gives
Yeah,
a
yeah,
shit.
no, I would actually say that the reason why I don't have heaps of hate is I'm not huge. I I I have a question. Like
No,
my
it's my
audience,
interview. No, go ahead.
yeah, my audience is 93% male. I would love to know how the hell I connect with women and not men, not
Mm-hmm.
binary people. Like I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I would really like you guys to come over. I don't know what I'm doing
Bring
wrong.
us back to
Yeah,
Australia.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I'd love to.
100%.
We can pal around. No,
But like YouTube, yeah, I've got this super gendered audience, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong to not connect with women or
see,
yeah,
I
or
think
not be.
about the only way I can relate to that is like one, probably I think technically most of our audience is also male, like a majority. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not a huge majority, but it's a majority. And
Mm.
I think it's like women still don't feel like they have permission to listen to heavy music for whatever reason.
Really?
And even though we're not like the heaviest music and we're not metal and we have catchy shit and we have a pop song or two, like it's still like punk. And
Yeah.
so it just doesn't reach the normies that are women. You can reach normies that are men and be heavy or punk, right? Like it still gets to them
100%.
somehow. And so I think like part of, us thinking about, working on a new album and what do we do and
Mm.
do we put some money in marketing and like if so where? Like
Yeah.
part of what I want is to just put our band in front of more women and LGBTQ folks and be like, this is for you. You know that, right? Like, are you okay with that? Like,
Yeah.
come on over. And I don't think it's like about our band or your show not being for women. It's about like it just not
The
being.
algorithm.
It's like the algorithm, yeah. Like it's
Yeah.
like
I'm not
and
like anything.
society, right?
Oh
And
my
so
God.
it would
Yeah.
take a special effort, but it's not like it. You shouldn't like blame your show, right?
Thank you. Well, Spotify says when you shows like this, it says we don't have any.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yikes! Yeah.
it's like, oh, I
Oh
don't
my
exist in the
goodness.
algorithm. But it's a, yeah, look, it's an interesting thing. Who we speak to matters, mental health is something that affects us all. So if I can
Yeah.
help anyway, then I would like to. I would like to hopefully have stories that these people tell that people look up to, that they can see a bit of themselves in them, and yeah, feel better.
And you know what? It's not for nothing that you're interviewing men, obviously not solely, but you're
Yeah.
interviewing men that male listeners can look up to. And these men you're interviewing are not incel right wing weirdos and might be able to show a version of masculinity that's vulnerable and open to talking about mental health and they're not fucking openly sexist or whatever and
Mm.
they're showing that they're
Mm.
showing not telling to the guys that are listening to your show. That's not nothing,
100%.
Like, I think
Man.
that has value because men are going off the fucking deep end lately and they need
Well,
alternatives.
the lack of role models, the absolute the gaping abyss where healthy role models should be has been filled by people like Andrew Tate and
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson. I'm not saying Jordan Peterson's wrong about everything, but he's wrong about most of them. He's wrong about most things. He's wrong about No, let's be honest. They're wrong about everything.
Yeah.
Those kind of role models are not healthy for then Andrew Tate in particular is a terrifying example of
Yes.
masculinity. And it's not masculinity, it's gross. It's just gross.
Yeah.
And I feel sad that men feel so lost that they don't have healthy people to look up to. But how do you create a role model? How do you create a role model? I don't know. Like I don't I think I talk to a lot of men. Most of my best friends are dudes and stuff, and I talk to them a lot about this, and they're like, we don't know what's expected of us anymore, and I not to, we don't know what the expectations are. Like, I thought I was doing it right, and
Right.
I don't think I am,
Yeah.
and I don't know what I'm meant to do to help. I want to help, and I don't know what I'm meant to do. So there's a lot of dudes who don't know what to do. They're like, I don't know what's expected of me. I know how to treat women respectfully, but I don't know what I'm meant to do to help. I've got no idea how to help. And I feel like that it'd be cool if I would like to have something to tell them. How do they help? Yeah.
Get on the streets and
And
protest Roe v. Wade getting overturned.
Yeah. Yeah, get in the street, start a Roe versus Wade, unturning, overturning back again, 180 back. Gonna have to be a new law. Yeah,
Yeah.
anyway. Anywho. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and for anyone listening, Christina and I were just speaking for her podcast. She just interviewed me, and we talked a lot about mental health and regular therapy, and I think again, I mentioned like if everyone had regular mental health care, like maybe it wouldn't be such a fucking crisis for men,
100%.
you know?
Yeah. It annoys me though, the male mental health epidemic. It's like, bro, it's all of us. It's cis. It's all of us. Yeah, I'm like, are the men
Yeah.
having a mental health epidemic? We're all having a mental health epidemic. No one talks about the female mental health epidemic. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah.
they're like, oh, guys, men are sad. I mean, they are, and they're very affected. I should not frame it like that. They are very effective at committing suicide in a way that is very distressing. The male suicide stats are really, really bad. It's very gendered. It's got a lot to do with the methods they choose and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not diminishing the male mental health, but I do think it's interesting that we never say female mental health epidemic.
Yeah, and really any kind of male mental health epidemic, it's like one,
It's
problems caused by men. Like they're
like,
lonely and committing suicide because of standards set by their own kind. And then also, who has to deal with their mental health problems? Like women are going to be on the receiving end of any
well,
kind of violence that might occur.
well,
Not
this
to
is
equate mental health with violence, but like it's not nothing.
there's It's kind of a thing that Richie Hardcore, who speaks to young men and boys who I had on the show about masculinity and porn and consent and all this kind of stuff, and he was talking about how it's actually only recently the scientists are kind of going, actually there might be a link between domestic violence and mental health. It's always been about it's always been positioned differently, and he's like it's actually quite a new thing for them to actually draw the link, but it's like it's fairly obvious. If you can't process your emotions, you're exploding in rage and hurting your family is it it makes sense. Not that it makes sense in a good way, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there's got to be some sort of link because in a lot of these cases, these men started with hurting animals and then they graduate to women and
And
then they
trauma.
graduate to other people or groups of people or, especially in our gun loving America, where it's easy to kill a bunch of people at once. So it's like, there's a few canary in the coal mines along the way to like
100%.
bigger moments of violence, and if we would just take those moments more seriously and intervene with resources, then
Living
hello.
in an living in an unarmed country is a level of mental health I'm sad you guys don't get to experience.
I
I walk around at night at a lot of hours, and I
know.
know statistically speaking, then it probably, I mean, there's guns here, but they're gang war. Like, we don't even have proper gangs. They're like, well, we do have gangs, but like, they're usually shooting each other. They're not holding women at gunpoint. Like,
Right.
I live in the city. I walk around at 2 in the morning and I'm not worried.
Yeah.
I mean, that's weird, right? God, I'm like
No,
having,
good for you.
yeah. Yeah,
No,
yeah, I'm
you're
sorry.
lucky.
Yeah, I
Like,
feel like
don't.
an asshole.
No,
I'm
I
coming in and
mean,
I'm like, yeah, you know how you guys are like living in fear of being shot all the time? It is a cakewalk over here.
sucks for
I'm just like,
you. No.
la-di-da-di-da. But
No, I know that's not
no,
true.
I wish women everywhere knew what it's like to not. I just live in a very, very, very safe part of the world. Sydney is a very safe city. And that's a rare thing. Like, I got a
Yeah.
friend from Colombia. I was like, had my wallet sitting on the table, whatever, and he's like, yeah, you can't do that in Colombia, bro. Like it's not, yeah, that's not a thing.
Can't do it in
It's
America.
yeah, 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 100%. It's like I'm like, oh, this is a cakewalk that we live here with, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Sorry, I don't mean
All
to
right.
brag.
I do
Yeah,
I do want to preface by
let's
saying
talk about lyrics. Yeah,
everything I've just talked about, I am not any kind of expert, and please don't look to me to like know everything
neither am
perfectly.
I.
But but maybe that should be the caveat to every episode about her lyrics that I have.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hmm.
no, let's talk about, well, yeah, if we're doing but her lyrics, are there, this seems like a big question, and if you didn't have an answer, I would understand. Like, do you have favorite lyrics or lyrics that you
Yeah.
always come back to or like that you always think about or like I don't even know
I
how to
like
ask that. That seems so vast.
a song that I really connect with is I fell on Black Days, which is a song by Soundgarden, which is about mental health, I guess. And I think Chris Cornell is one of the most gifted artists to inhabit the world. And he wrote all his melodies, he wrote all the music. Like he not all he wrote a astonishing proportion of Soundgarden's sound and stuff, and he's someone who we lost along the way, and yeah, that song really resonates with me. And whatsoever I've cured, I've sickened now. Whatsoever I've cradled, I've put you down, down, down. Yeah.
Yeah. I do love that song.
But it's just, that for me, that's just what comes to mind. Like if I'm really thinking about, like, obviously there's a lot of lyrics that I connect with, but that song for me, when I first heard it, I was like, and I tried to sing it at my singing teacher's concert. I have a singing teacher and I'm learning, and I'm writing music with a friend while he's writing
Whoa.
music and I'm writing lyrics. So I'm at I should not
Oh.
say this in public. I should wait until the songs are done. This is insane. I debated about this because I'm like, I'm basically at the absolute beginning of my journey where I've written a lot of stuff and I've just started working with someone. So
Am I just that good of an interviewer
forever.
that you're just telling me, you're
I didn't
confessing
mean
your
to
whole
do that.
life
I
to
probably
me?
shouldn't do that. I probably shouldn't do that because I don't want to get ahead of myself and I don't know how long it's going to take to get good. But I've always kind of made sense of the world with words, and I've written a lot of stuff, and for me it just comes, it's just sort of comes really naturally. I've always been a big reader, and so I just feel like words are such a powerful medium, and they're so able to I think there's something so magical about being able to conjure so many different things in people, and for your words to mean something different to every single person. And I think, you've done this for a long time. I mean, what does it feel like to know that one thing that's meant something to you is meaning something completely different to everyone else?
It's fucking wild.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's humbling.
Yeah.
And it's just fucking wild. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
love it. I love it when people tell me their experiences with our songs, or how it affected them, because it's just, it's gutting, like in the most beautiful way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's the point of being alive if you're not connecting with other people and putting stuff out?
Hey.
Creative expression is, I often feel like I'd be useless in the apocalypse, but creative expression would actually get us through. And if we look at apocalyptic events like COVID, I don't think any of us would have survived without artists, even though artists copped it the worst
Yeah.
by every metric in the world. Like it's really, it's a powerful thing.
You
Yeah.
know, kind of on that note, okay, so like you haven't been in a band before, you haven't really sang
Dude,
publicly.
I'm really scared about that. I've sung at my singing teacher's concerts.
Yeah,
That's it.
and I'm sure a lot of my listeners like also are in the same boat, or maybe never really did it for real. Not putting a value judgment on for real, quote unquote, right? But I'm interested in this idea of like having this creative outlet, being interested in words, like writing,
It's terrifying.
without the pressure of performing. Like, what
Yeah.
is your process? What do you do with these words? How do you
Dude.
think about it?
I wish I had a process. This is the thing about, like, and this is so like I've always found this very daunting. I used to sing with my first love, and she died in a car accident a year after we were together. And then me and her sister used to play guitar and sing. She used to play guitar and we used to sing together and stuff. And then she died, and both of us stopped touching music for like decades.
I'm sorry to hear
And
that.
then, yeah, it's a lot, but we actually got together and sang a whole song at her 20-year wake, and that was really cool. Because she was obsessed with Courtney Love.
Yeah.
But it's embarrassing to talk about this because I'm so early in it, but I am finding it very interesting because there's no rules. There's no rules on how to, like, stuff just falls out of my head. Like, I find it comes out really easily, but then like the concept of writing melody, and I'm just lucky I'm working with a film composer who knows how to play every instrument. So I'm definitely not coming at this at first base. Like
Right.
he's like, I love your lyrics and I want to work with you. And I don't have a perfect voice or anything. I've got, it's rock voices don't have to be perfect.
That's
You
for
know?
fucking sure.
And yeah, and that's
Thank
the
goodness.
beautiful thing. So yeah, okay, here's an origin story. Maybe one day our band will be huge and it'll be fine, or even
Yes.
just we'll play a show. I think that I don't need to be huge, just need to
That's a
like
good goal. Play a show.
lose my crippling.
You can do
But what's
that.
really interesting thing is, speaking of lyrics and singing, is I had a singing teacher and she was good. I kind of saw her on and off because I was broke for a really long time. And now I've got a new singing teacher who's one of my best friends from high school. And he's an artist. And now I've got original stuff to work on. Instead of doing covers, we're talking about how does this song sound? What tone can you use? What are all the creative choices you can make? Because that was like, I wish I had, oh, I don't know if I've got my notebook. Um, I may have a notebook. Okay. So these are the things that he told me I can play with because this is relevant. Ways of singing to create interest and emotion. He said, so volume, low, medium, or quiet. Duration, is it a long or a short note? Tone color, is it rough or breathy or nasal or a high larynx or low larynx? Is there movement? Is it straight or vibrato? Is there character? What part are you playing? It's all cabaret, I wrote in my notes. He said, because it's all cabaret. Well, who's your persona and what do I want to teach people? And I was like, in terms of writing a lyric and learning how to apply it to a melody and stuff, I'm like, that gives you a lot to work with. You're like, well, what decision am I making on number one? What decision am I making on number eight?
Yeah.
And even if you haven't got the skills yet, it's still really interesting to go, well, how can I make it work for me? I'm never going to sound like Chris Cornell, but how can I sound like me? And how can I make this have truth for me and not be terrified, not be blindly I can't believe I'm talking about this in a public place.
No, it's really cool, actually.
I'm going to have a heart attack. But I'm like, hey, I'm just going to but this is a good way to force yourself to keep going.
It's like accountability, right? Like you got to keep going because you talked about it. Yeah.
But how the hell do you do it? I don't know how to do this.
Well,
how do you write melody?
What I find really interesting about what you're saying is like you're listing like ingredients, right, to make a recipe, and you like pick and choose, and it's a good way to think about it if you don't have a place to start. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But like for me, I've been like making up songs and writing music since I can remember, right? Like I got my first guitar at 12 and I was writing songs right away. And I was singing before then as soon as I could talk, right? And so there was no like analyzing what was happening. I was just living it and growing and whatever. I also didn't take lessons and never studied music. And so it was all just what was inside. And so this analyzing it is just so foreign to me, right?
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm just like,
no, but it's like, but it makes me feel like, well, everything can be analyzed and every brain works differently. And so it's like whatever works for you. Choose the thing that works for you. And maybe it's figuring. Yeah, it's just like, again, it's a jumping off point of like, oh yeah, do I want to be whispery or do I want to be yelling? You know, great.
Yeah.
Let's
think about that.
Line
be whisper? Is this line whispery and is this line like Jonathan Davis from Porn? You know,
right.
and then, but because I feel like dude, I have to do this well. I've been working in this industry for 20 years. I've interviewed 300 bands. I can't come out with a shit band. Like I can't do that.
Well, I would say
many people it'll be visible. It's embarrassing.
This is where what I wanted to get from this moment was this idea that like you can be creative and like have an outlet without the pressure of performing or putting it out there in the world or making money from it, and it can still be helpful and beneficial to you. And then like if you, Christina, make an album and you're like, well, it's not good enough for everyone I've ever interviewed to listen to this, that doesn't mean it was for nothing or that it wasn't worth doing or that it wasn't helpful. And it also doesn't mean you can't like try again. And like, you know what I mean? So I just want that to be really clear to everyone listening. Like art doesn't have to be made for public consumption, right? It can be made for you. It doesn't have to be good to be beneficial, and good is subjective. And it doesn't have to be like one and done magically, like you're supposed to make the most amazing record as your first record. That's insane.
Yeah, not everyone can be the Violent Femmes and be wildly successful. We had Brian from the Violent Femmes the other day, and he's like,
in a bottle.
It was awesome. It was like I could go to family functions and everyone would not tell me, well, what are you really doing? He's like, I'm touring the world. I've got a hit song. Like, and that was the most relatable part of the interview. I'm like, if you work in music or in the creative arts and you haven't had a very unpleasant discussion at a family function about what you
Yes.
really do
Yes.
is,
Yes.
then you
Yes.
probably haven't been doing it long enough because
Yeah.
or you haven't reached the advanced years where everyone is like, well, but what are you really gonna
Why don't you
do?
do
Yeah.
something else? No, my
Yeah.
version of that is like, oh, you're in a band? Like, okay, we'll just go on the Jimmy Kimmel show. And I'm like, okay, I'll just call him.
Yeah,
Like, so it's the assumption that, oh, well, you do anything music related, you must be super famous. And it's like, what? No, also not true. Also not
there's so many
possible.
layers.
So many others.
Well, this is kind of like inspired. Oh, I do feel like it's accountability, and I do think it's it's really it's a really special thing. I have so much more, not that I didn't have respect before, but for lyricists too, it's it's such an art form and there's no rules to
Mm.
it. It's not like you can learn this violin like the ways you play the violin. There are no rules to this at all. There are literally zero rules. I'm like, because I'm such an I over intellectualize everything. I'm like, well, I want to do it right. I'm gonna learn this and I'm gonna learn this and I
Right.
over
Tell me the
intellectualize.
formula. Tell me what to do. Right. But
Tell me, okay, look,
you
I'll do
can't.
it. And my therapist is like this as well. And she's like, you're a heart person and you're in complete denial about it. You operate in this way where you're like, you want to over intellectualize everything. You want to do everything through that lens of like, well, I'm going to think about it and I want a gold star and I'll be an A grade student and I'm gonna learn all the ways and I'm gonna work harder than everyone else. And it's like, you can't do that with emotion. You have to feel it. You just have to
Mm.
sit there and feel it and you need to not run away from it. And I'm like, well, I'd rather think about it and analyze it and stress, and I would rather do that. So I'm not comfortable with this at all.
But
But
that's
it's
also
very,
an emotion, feeling
yeah,
uncomfortable. You're welcome.
emotion, different emotion. No, but
All right.
I like this. I feel like I'm feeling accountable, and yeah, he's written 35 demos, which is terrifying.
That
Yeah,
reminds me of high
film,
school.
film composers, bro. Yeah, film composers.
Yeah.
Bro is an Australian non-gendered term of endearment. I just want to say that. That's
Okay, bro. No
part of it. It's
problem,
like,
dude.
yeah. No, I want
Um,
you to, yeah, do. Yeah, anyway, sorry.
one more question before we go.
Go on.
Um, what is either your most favorite interview you've ever done or most a memorable moment that comes to mind, especially if it was with like a woman, but it doesn't have to be. Uh,
That's
what's something
really
that
hard.
sticks with you?
That's really hard.
I bet.
Um,
I know. I know. I
I
know. It's a
think,
tough question.
well, honestly, I think the first episode of the mental health show, because I'd spent, 15 years doing stuff, just about records and about tours and stuff. And this was the first time I was talking to artists about their mental health specifically, like it would come up. And the first one we put out was Corey Taylor. And that's been the most popular episode by about 100 million percent. And he is a very skilled, he knows what you need in a media environment. And he's also
Mm.
very honest and very forthright and very vulnerable and spoke about a lot of stuff that I was surprised to hear someone talk about. And for me, like this show is about, I know I have to level up and I feel like whatever I've done in the past, I have to get better to be able to create a space where people are comfortable enough to go into these places. And he really went into those
Mm.
places. So for me, that's one of the reasons why I like it as a challenge. It's like, it's an opportunity to try and refine my technique and try and refine my ability to summon, create a space for vulnerability. And it's really interesting because I think there's intimacy coordinator and what I'm trying to do here is like, I just want to create a space where people feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable. And it's kind of the same premise.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
But yeah, if
Oh,
you were
I
going to
love
suss
it.
anything I've done, suss that interview because that's and the comment section is will break your heart. It's all these people coming in and saying I've dealt with all this stuff, and then no, but the best part is everyone replying, going, "Hey man, I know what it feels like," and it's just like
Oh,
it's just like, oh God, the feels, guys, the feels. So
that's
it's
lovely.
nice. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, where can people find
God,
you,
I had an
Christina?
answer. Christina Rowatt on Instagram, Christina Rowatt on YouTube, Face. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, that's where I live. YouTube and Instagram. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll
Yeah.
put all the, interviews and shows and stuff that we referenced, we'll put in the show notes. And Christina, thank you so much for joining me on But Her Lyrics. I'm excited to hear that you're actually writing lyrics.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to be here. This is the first time I've ever been interviewed, so hope I did okay and yeah, I appreciate you and all of your art and this is another one of your arts and cool. Thanks.
You did good, dude.
Thank you. Fucking Jesus Christ. Oh.
I think she did pretty fucking good for her first time being an interviewee. What do you say? And I really hope by listening to this, you're inspired to do something that scares you, right? To get away from the screens and do something creative just for you. If I had permission to play Soundgarden's Fell on Black Days at the end of this episode, I would, but I don't. But instead, I'll just link it in the show notes and you can take a listen at your leisure. You can support this podcast by liking my YouTube channel and sharing, subscribing, and reviewing But Her Lyrics wherever you get your podcasts. It's free and it helps. To find episode transcripts or to find out more about what I do, my book, my trainings, my Patreon, head to shawnapotter.com. To learn about all things War on Women, head to our linktree, linktr.ee/waronwomen. We do have shows coming up, y'all, all over the US and some Canadian dates with Helmet, so please come say hi if I'm coming to your town. You can also find me on Cameo. If you haven't already, subscribe to my Patreon and tell me who I should interview next. Thanks for listening, and please take care of yourselves and each other for the next 4 years. We'll need our wits about us to fuck shit up properly. Good luck, and I'll see you out there.